Imagine closing your eyes and suddenly paying for oil with a currency you've never even heard of. It sounds like fiction, but a group of powerful countries is quietly planning something like that. On paper, it's a big deal. One economist described it as a basket-backed, collateral-anchored settlement instrument for wholesale cross-border trade. If this ever works, it could even challenge the dollar's status as the world's main reserve currency. That prospect is both intriguing and unnerving. Let's peel back the headline hype and see what's real and what's still wishful thinking. First, why does this matter right now? The US dollar has long been king, giving America an exorbitant privilege to run huge deficits with low interest costs. But that footing is under stress. $6 trillion, roughly 123% of GDP, and the debt was growing at nearly 69,000 per second. $2 trillion piled on in 2025 alone. Inflation has come down from its peaks, but it's still around 3% per year, above the Fed's 2% goal, meaning the Federal Reserve can't relax just yet. Meanwhile, weaponized US sanctions are choking Russia, Iran, and others. Russia alone has seen hundreds of billions in dollar assets frozen abroad. All this stirs a common thought among US rivals and even some US allies. Maybe we shouldn't be so dependent on Washington's currency. As Brazil's foreign affairs advisor put it, no one is planning to abandon the US dollar, but there still needs to be an alternative. In other words, the foundation that made the dollar so safe, the giant US economy and global trust in it, is showing some cracks, and that has these nations scanning for a plan B. So what exactly is the BRICS currency plan? It isn't a coin in your pocket like euros or dollars. Think of it as a special unit for big international deals. The idea is to create a common settlement currency, let's call it the BRICS unit, that these countries can use when they trade with each other. That way, a Chinese exporter and a Brazilian importer could settle in one currency, without each side first converting to US dollars. According to RNZ, the BRICS unit would not be controlled by any single country or central bank, nor function as an everyday currency. Instead, it's a basket-backed instrument. Recent reports say it will be about 60% a basket of BRICS nations' national currencies and 40% in physical gold. In fact, a Russian research institute announced a prototype, a trade currency known as the unit, with those exact proportions. Brazil's New Development Bank president, Dilma Rousseff, even said there's been an agreement in principle to use a new settlement currency, 40% backed by gold and 60% by member currencies. Imagine all those gold bars and multiple currencies locked together as a single money on a ledger. The goal is for it to be a sort of super stable billing unit for oil deals, soybean shipments, infrastructure projects, all intra-BRICS trade, settling balances without touching the dollar. On its face, the plan sounds potent, but the hidden math and real-world hurdles are huge. For one, there simply isn't an endless supply of trusted alternative money. BRICS nations do hold a lot of gold, around 6,100 tons between them, by 2024. But the US still holds more, 8,100 tons. If other countries decided to cash in BRICS units en masse, those ounces of gold would have to go somewhere. Meanwhile, the rest of the unit is just a basket of 5 currencies: the yuan, rupee, ruble, real, and rand, from Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Those countries aren't on the same page economically. India or Brazil sure wouldn't want to replace dollar dependence with full yuan dependence. Well, we know it, because after US threats, India's leaders shut down that idea quickly. South Africa's economy is relatively small on the world stage. Iran's under heavy sanctions, and China's currency, even if pushed, is still only about 7% of global FX use, compared to 90% for the dollar. The Atlantic Council notes that strategic rivals like China and Russia aim to undermine the dollar to blunt US sanctions power and raise the cost of US borrowing. But even they acknowledge it's a tall order. There are simply no other currencies with deep, liquid markets anywhere close to the dollar. In short, to replace the dollar the BRICS unit would have to overcome mountains of trust and infrastructure issues, not to mention political disagreements. RBC Wealth Analysis bluntly calls a BRICS currency a red herring for now, warning that real progress is more likely through smaller steps than a grand currency merger. So far, the headlines don't match the reality. The July 2025 BRICS summit in Rio produced zero concrete steps toward a shared currency. Not even a mention in the final declaration. Only Brazil's Lula occasionally brought it up, and even he is increasingly quiet. Why? Because on the ground, the dollar is still winning where it counts. Consider the numbers. By one measure, the dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves fell from about 85% in the 1970s to 50% in 2022. That sounds like a big drop. But in actual transactions, the dollar is used in nearly 90% of currency trades and about half of all SWIFT payments. The Chinese yuan, by contrast, is roughly 12% of the IMF's reserve basket, but only about 7% of trades, a gap that tells you how slowly trust is shifting. In practice, global banks and businesses still default to the dollar because it's dependable and liquid. One payments analyst notes that even these emerging economies still compete fiercely in many sectors. Building a new common currency is inherently challenging, he says. In other words, they'll keep building spot solutions where they can find common cause, but big flows are likely to stay on safe rails. Meanwhile, the BRICS countries are focusing on doable steps. They're steadily increasing bilateral trade in local money, like India buying oil with rupees, or Brazil and China settling in real and yuan. Russia claims roughly 90% of its trade with China and other BRICS partners is now in national currencies. These aren't meaningless gestures. And 70% of Brazil's soybeans, transactions done without dollars. They're also beefing up their own infrastructure. The BRICS pay system, like a shared Venmo, is in demo mode, and China's Say-Peace payment network now links 119 countries. These parallel rails don't upend the dollar overnight, but they create optionality, as one analysis put it, alternatives that didn't exist a decade ago. Think of it as buying insurance, not writing the dollar's obituary. One recent legal brief sums it up nicely. The dollar's being marginalized in specific corridors of global trade. But there's no revolution yet. Their moves add up, but they won't suddenly smash the dollar's dominance without many more breakthroughs. Zoom out, and the stakes get even clearer. If a BRICS currency ever took off as an international standard, it would shift global power. Oil and commodities could start trading in BRICS units or local currencies, undercutting the petrodollar. Countries around the world, especially in the global south, might follow along to avoid US pressure. For the US, that could mean we lose our ability to borrow so cheaply and to enforce sanctions. The Atlantic Council warns that losing dollar dominance could quickly raise US interest costs and chip away at American influence. On the flip side, a new multipolar currency regime could bring volatility. Multiple blocs with their own money could fight for dominance, potentially roiling markets. Already, US policymakers are paying attention. This politicization shows how high the stakes are. So where do things stand? The story isn't over. Right now, the dollar still holds the crown. As the BRICS analysis bluntly concludes, the dollar isn't going anywhere soon, even if for the first time it faces organized alternatives. However, it's uneasy. Every new oil deal in rupees, every cross-border yuan-real swap, each ton of gold added to reserves by BRICS nations, all mark a small loosening of the dollar's grip. It's like watching the first cracks form in a once solid dam. The question no one can fully answer yet is whether those cracks will widen or be patched. Will the BRICS unit remain a concept on paper or evolve into a real, widely used currency? Will global trust fracture or hold? The truth is, only time will tell where this goes. What we do know is that one of the world's biggest financial dramas is playing out behind the scenes, and it could determine what currency we all use tomorrow.